Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you my list that will be taking on lanes. I have absolutely no idea. List that he'll be bringing tonight. Happy holidays to everyone. Hope everyone had a good holiday season as we're getting back into the swing of things here on the channel after all the chaos and hecticness. We all have our things. It's the holiday season, and that means that we are all super, super busy. So I do apologize for the delay of some of the content, but now we have Christmas has passed, moving on to New Year's, and getting ready to get in all the swing of things that everything we talked about for the new year. And that includes the tournament that Lane and I have discussed playing, where we run all of our armies and crown our first channel champion. Now, with that being said, one of the armies that I plan on running during that tournament is going to be Ad Mech. And after the GT, I got the Codex. I said, hey, let's look at these guys and see what they're all about and what they can do. For me, I play Grey Knights during a rough time, as I talked about it before on the channel. And that army always will hold a special place. But then during that time, the group of guys that I traveled with and was playing with competitively, one of the only armies that we didn't have to practice against, that nobody played, was the Adeptus Mechanicus. And I liked some of their models. I liked some of the flavor behind them, the old school at this time. And so I decided, hey, I'll play Ad Mech. Let's give it a try. And something about Ad Mech clicked with me. Because at that time, I was playing Grey Knights, and I would see 3-2 and 4-1 finishes. I was fresh to the competitive scene. I was good at the game, but I didn't have all the reps on the table, and some of the new competitive was different for me. Once I picked up Ad Mech, that was the first 5-0 finish for a GT. And something about that army and the way it played and everything it did, I just fell in love with. Now, over a couple editions, some stuff has changed from what I was playing at that time till now. And for me, I still love those units, including one of the big stars of this list today, the Castellan Robots. Castellan Robots are like, armies have your favorite units. You're like, oh, I love that unit. That's my favorite unit for this army. Castellan Robots would be on my list of potentially favorite units in the game. Not only for what they look like, but for what they've done in the past in my mind. And basically, if people aren't aware in the sense of what they could do, there was a time frame where shooting with a squad of Castellan Robots meant you were taking 118 shots. You would lock the robots down, and they would triple their gun characteristic. And their handguns were all individual guns plus the shoulder one. Now, over time, some of that stuff has changed. It's not as competitive or been as strong. Last edition, Robots and Dragoons, I was able to make them work. They did great. Awesome. But now this codex that we see now. And when I initially looked at it, I looked at some of the stuff in there, and I wasn't completely satisfied with how some of the stuff is being played out. With that being said, there's a lot of other very interesting little intricate details to some of the units that I'm taking that are different. They're different tools. So I got to see it. So obviously, I'll put everything I like on my list on the channel. Now, with that being said, as I was putting this together, and it was originally just a meme of robots and stuff, then I stopped and started to tool more over in the competitive aspect. So at this time, I would say, if I was going to an RTT to play for a weekend and play with some of my friends, and I was told, hey, you should bring Ad Mech, this is probably pretty close to something at this point in time with the knowledge that I have that I would consider taking, mostly because I have the units that I have in it that I want to run. So, one thing I haven't said, and I should say it always, or much earlier on, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Turn on the bell to get notified on all the content we bring you here on the channel. And if some of this stuff works out, hey, it might be some more Ad Mech. But there will definitely be a lot more Necrons. I am going to be working on the Hypercrypt Legion here soon on request. So I'm going to put one of those, a list like that out on the channel and kind of mess with them a bit. I am excited to try them out since Grey Knights are definitely a big part of my heart. But this was one of my big competitive stands with Ad Mech. I got the book. They just got to keep all my armies up to date. I gotta at least play them one time. So while I'm working on the Hypercrypt Legion, this is a good time to just get my robots on the channel and do what I'm doing. So, all right, let's take a look at what I'm bringing. I'll probably do this a little quicker, shoot through this, and I'm going to talk about a little more on some of the stuff that I'm curious about towards it. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. All right, let's take a look. All right, here we go. Here is my Ad Mech that I will be taking against Lane tonight. I will be using the Cybernetic Cohort because Castellan Robots. So here I was able to get quite a bit of Ranger bodies in there in the Skitarii to be able to have some objective control play. And there is some really interesting synergies, especially out of some stuff that's going to come out of this detachment. So first off, let's start off with the infantry. So we have 3 squads of Rangers and 1 squad of Vanguard. I took a spread. I like the Rangers that they can scout. I don't like that the galvanic rifle has no AP, but it does have 2 shots. So we'll see how they generally perform. More or less, there's a couple of good things that these guys can do, and their shooting, their range, etc. The biggest reason I took 3 of them is because of the scout move. The Vanguard can reduce toughness of non-vehicle units. I'm not sure how critical that will be, but this is, I want to throw a unit in there and go over their abilities and have their abilities at hand. Lane and myself will be starting the game a bit earlier, so I'll have more time to look at these guys, where they're not as much researched as I don't have them memorized completely with the Vanguard and the Rangers, but looking at them on hand, the biggest thing that is a definite draw is the fact that these guys, the Rangers can scout. The Vanguard, I want to at least put 10 in there and see if I like them, see what they can do. These guys will probably be taking up most of my backfield because I will be very aggressive with the other units that I have their stats more committed to memory. And we're going to start off with the last of the foot troop, in a sense, which is going to be my 2 engine seers. Now here's where we get to the stuff that I'm versed in. So my red engine seer, who is a good luck charm from a buddy of mine, so he stays red, old school pewter engine seer, he is going to be the warlord for this list. He will have the relic enhancement to be able to 0 out 1 failed armor save once per battle round. And he will also just be wandering around with the vehicles, as well as his other buddy, Engine Seer. So what these guys can do is they gain lone op when they're within 3 inches of a vehicle. They can heal a vehicle, and the vehicle that they heal will then gain a feel no pain. Now remember, it is a vehicle model, so with some of my vehicle units, if I heal a vehicle, it would just be that model that received the regaining of wounds that would gain the feel no pain. Once that model dies, then the feel no pain would go away. But that's still a nice, unique ability, not to mention the fact that if any of my vehicle units lose a single model within 12 inches of these guys, they get angry, and they get a boosted attack characteristic, and all for the low cost of only 45 points. These guys might be a little more impressive than it seems. Then we'll move over into the vehicle. So first things first, the Onagers. We'll go with them first. So my Onager Dunecrawlers. I love these things. The giant base just covers so much terrain. And last edition, I was actually running 3 of them, to some people's surprise. Maybe it's because they look like spiders. That probably has something to do with it. But their large base lets them cover a lot of ground. The Icarus array is just a heavy, heavy volley of shots, also giving me access to the Daedalus missile for a higher strength, higher damage hit, which is something that my army kind of lacks in some other columns. On top of all that, any model that is within 6 inches of them and is battle lined also gets a 4-up invulnerable save. So I don't have to keep my Rangers completely compact around these things. But if a couple of them are within 6 inches and I take wounds on those guys first, they would then get a 4-up invulnerable save, on top of the Onager itself having a 4-up invulnerable save. This thing, I think, is just going to be weirdly durable. And honestly, in some future lists, I might try and run 3 of them. Next up is the Dragoons, the Sidonian Dragoons, and they have taser lances. A lot of people are going over to the other gun option, and there's been some talk with it. But I like the taser lance version, and I especially like it out of the Cybernetic Cohort, and here's why. So the Cybernetic Cohort has a stratagem. It is 1 command point, and you target a vehicle unit in your command phase. not any of the other crazy Legionnaire, Cybernetica, or any of that stuff, just a vehicle unit. So I can target the Dragoon. And what does it get? Well, it gives the Dragoon, first of all, +3 to its move characteristic. Then it gives it +1 to advance and charge rolls. This means the Dragoon would be able to move 13 inches and then advance +d6, inherently on its data sheet having advance and charge and fall back and charge as part of its abilities. So these guys, 13 plus d6 +1 inches on their move, for then a charge that they get +1 on. These guys can charge on turn 1 potentially and just be up in someone's face doing damage. Now, they did get a reduction of their weapon skill and they only hit on 4s. They are still sustained 2, and they have this weird anti-walker keyword. So if anybody's got dreadnoughts or walkers or titans or imperial knights, these guys can hit those things really, really, really hard. So that's interesting and kind of funny and random. And I kind of hope Lane brings some sort of walker so that I can maximize that. And last but surely not least, the stars of the show, the Castellan Robots. I will be bringing 8 of them. 2 4-man squads, which are maximum squad size now. And both of them will have a data smith. Yes, the data smith is infantry, but I consider him just part of the unit because you don't buy him unless you buy them, and you don't buy them unless you're going to take him. It really, you have to. The robots inherently on their data sheet are absolute trash. The gun profile is significantly weaker. It is maintained the same strength characteristic of strength 6 that we've seen over multiple editions. It does count the shoulder and hand cannons as different types of phosphor blasters. So one of them is damage 2 at 0 AP, other one's AP 1 damage, I believe. Now, the one thing that I might be wrong on that, I apologize, but the one thing that is consistent is they still ignore cover, which is okay combined with the AP 1, since then they can do a little bit more damage, or maybe they knock out the cover, so maybe they'll do a little more there. But the one thing that is really not cool, that I'm not happy about, is the fact that taking 2 of the hand cannons are no longer separate guns, they are now twin-linked. Which, granted, that's nice because they're only strength 6, so the re-rolling failed wounds is nice, but that means they are only 3 shots for those, and 3 shots on the shoulder, which makes them really, really unimpressive. Same is true for the close combat attacks, which now taking 2 fists simply means you get twin-linked. In some ways, it seems like the better variation would be to build these guys with a single gun, single fist combination, and I do strongly consider that. However, with the cybernetic cohort and the datasmith, the twin-linked might be better than it seems. While running the Castellan Robots and other detachment may really play to the fact of having 1 handgun, 1 fist. With the datasmith in the cybernetic cohort, there's a little more we can do with these guys. So the datasmith is going to allow me to shift protocols. I can go +1 toughness for defensive, +2 shots for shooting, or +2 attacks in combat for, well, in close combat. Now, that combined with the detachment buffs and the stratagems that we have access to, make this a little more plausible to why I would want the twin-linked over the single gun option in here, because now we do have ways to kind of control the hit roll and make things happen. One of the squads is going to have 2 robots with double fist. The other one will have a single. So we'll have 3 gun bots in one unit, 2 gun bots in the other. The reason for this is so that one unit is definitely going to play more on the forward, one unit is definitely going to play on the back. I don't want to go into a unit without having at least one potential to fight back in combat, because even though they're vehicles, I would rather not get fully bogged down with this list, and I want to make sure I can still do damage and get myself out of combat. All right, so that's the list. That's what we bring in today. So I mentioned about the fact of the Dragoons and how quick they can be. Some of the things with the robots. So the cybernetic cohort ability is now I get Doctrina, where normally the robots would not gain the Doctrina. What this means is twofold. If I go second, I can play defensive, or if I go into a heavy gun line, I can play defensive and use the defensive Doctrina to stay in my deployment zone, gaining Armor of Contempt, and also Heavy. So now if I sit still with the robots, if someone is going to be aggressive, a World Eaters or a fast-moving army, I can position myself in firing lanes, let them move towards me, and then be defensive, where I have Armor of Contempt against any stray. I know World Eaters is what I said, but any stray shooting I'm now defensive against and can remove and hit this infantry really, really, really hard by being able to hit on threes. Now this goes into why Twin Link starts to become important. We have access and stratagem. So if we do get shot at, say my unit that has, excuse me, a single double fist robot in there, and they get shot at, I have to remove that robot. I have to remove robot. Okay, I remove the double fist. So now I have 3 gun bots that remain. And those 3 gun bots will have 5 shots apiece from the datasmith changing their protocols, and the cataclysms giving me +1 to hit for the 3-up ballistic skill. Now, because we lost a model in there and we are now below starting strength, we have access into stratagems that boost our hit roll there. So now, if we didn't have the twin linked, we could hit really, really well. But now we are going to fail to wound because we're only strength 6. So anything that is not anything T5 or less, cool, we're wounding on 3s. Anything toughness 3, yeah, we're wounding on 2s, and that can be relevant. But anything that is strength 6 or above, now we're wounding on 4s or even 5s. And for a gun unit like that and the cost into them, having the twin linked and being able to re-roll into the 5s, I feel more comfortable about. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, the Rangers and the Vanguard, I've looked on them a bit. I've refreshed myself on them, and they're very good utility to be able to cover the field. But most of my game is going to be taking the robots, taking the Dragoons, and just pushing them and making their tougher bodies so much that my opponent has to deal with, that my Rangers, my Vanguard, and all of them are able to just play on the field and just score points and be cheap units that can just get on objectives, score secondaries, do actions, do all this other stuff, while my army is just being vehicle-like in your face. All right, guys. Well, there is my list. I'm looking very, very forward to playing it. Hopefully, I don't just get completely obliterated. I have no idea what Lane's bringing at all yet. And yeah, I'll find out when he gets here. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.